30 years ago, Roger Corman began to explore the dark side of the American psyche. With movies like The Undead, The Pit and the Pendulum, and the original Little Shop of Horrors. Now, he feels the world is ready for the greatest horror story ever told, as it's never been told before. Frankenstein, Unbound, starring John Hurt, Raul Julia, and Bridget Fonda, directed by Roger Corman.
In a world where podcasts reign supreme, two friends dare to ask, do you even movie? Hosted by filmmaker Henrique Couto and movie aficionado David D. Neuer. Spoiler alert.
Hello and welcome back to Do You Even Movie? I am, of course, your host, Henrique Couto, here with my good buddy, co-host, and whatever else you may be.
Yes.
David DeNoyer.
Greetings.
And we have a very exciting show for you today.
Yes, we do.
Because we are in the midst of Roger Corman Appreciation Month here at Do You Even Movie. Last week we covered Humanoids from the Deep, which was one of Roger's most notorious productions as a producer. But Roger made his name first. Well, technically he produced first.
Produced first, yeah.
But he made a major name for himself as a director, directing nearly 100 titles.
Yeah.
Some famous ones. His Poe adaptations, of course.
Absolutely.
But one thing that Roger very seldom had was a lot of money to work with.
Yeah.
Now, throughout his career, he directed movies for big studios, small studios, his own studios, and then around the 80s, he just stopped. It was actually the late 70s.
Early 70s is his last directorial,
So he just stopped dead. He said that it was far too time-consuming running his distribution company, New World Pictures, at the time.
Yeah.
So now we fast forward 20 years.
That we do.
And some curious businessmen.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that they're like mobbed up or something. I just legitimately, as much as I love this film and I love Roger Corman, I'm like, why did they think this was the one to do?
Yeah.
But even if it wasn't a good business decision, they decided to hire Roger Corman to make a $10 million plus.
Yeah.
Just barely. Frankenstein movie.
Yes.
Well, they hired him to make a horror movie. And then he came up with the book Frankenstein Unbound.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert. Well, I don't have it ready. I don't have it.
Spoiler alert.
That's the name of the film.
Yes, it is.
It's Frankenstein Unbound from 1990, directed by Roger Corman. And not only is it his last film as a director, but probably his most underrated.
Yeah.
Because it just kind of
vanished.
Yeah, it just came and went. There was always I would always hear people say, and then there's Roger Corman, because people would always call it Roger Corman's Frankenstein.
Unbound, yeah.
Well, I would always hear him just say Roger Corman's Frankenstein.
Okay,
People would just forget the Unbound part.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think in marketing, it might have been smarter to have just called it Roger Corman's Frankenstein.
And they kind of did. I mean, seeing that ad at the beginning, Unbound is like the word that you could barely read.
Well, because the book was from the 70s or something, and I'm guessing it wasn't super well known.
No.
And also because, as we'll explain when we dive deep into this, Frankenstein Unbound is not just a Frankenstein story.
Yeah.
It's a science fiction Frankenstein story.
That it
Although
is.
all Frankenstein stories, if you really want to,
are science
split
fiction.
hairs, they're all science fiction, but they're also period pieces.
Yeah.
It takes place in the 1800s. So this one, we've got the future is where we start.
Yep.
We've got time travel. We've got more pontification about man's desire to be God.
Yeah.
And on top of all of that, we then wind up in the 1800s where it turns out Frankenstein was a real guy.
Frankenstein's happening, yes.
With a real monster.
Yes, he is.
And that the book was based on reality.
Yeah.
That's like spoiling the first 6 minutes of the film, because that's the setting for Frankenstein Unbound. And this is one, like I said, I'd always heard about it, never really sought it out.
Yeah.
I ended up seeking it out years later when I decided to do a hardcore dive of Roger Corman. Because most people probably don't know this about me, but once you tell me like, hey, there's this movie and this movie and this movie that no one's really seen, I'm like, I'm gonna find it.
You're gonna find it, yeah.
I'm like Liam Neeson in Taken.
You absolutely are. I mean,
I will find you. And I'll enjoy you with a popcorn.
There are lists of movies that I will send you from time to time and be like, hey, can you locate these? Because I can find stuff from time to time as far as like physical releases go. The problem is that do I want to pay the prices for some of those physical releases?
Oh, you pay the price.
I do pay the price on some of those, yes. But then I can also just give you a list and be like, hey, could you track these down? And I would say
pretty regular that
99.9% of the time you deliver.
I have only failed with knowing the title of the film, because that's important to point out. Like, there are plenty of movies where I'm like, I have like the inkling of a memory of it, and I still haven't found it.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think there are 2 films that I have the title for and haven't found.
Okay.
One of them was a PM Entertainment title.
Yeah.
And one was, I think, a Corman title from 1994 or 95. I'd have to look at my notes.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're here to talk about.
It is not.
We want to celebrate the man and now the full-blown legend, Roger Corman, as he passed away last month. And this week we're talking all about Frankenstein Unbound. So Dave, do you want to throw the deets our way, or first should we mention thank you to everybody who stopped by our live stream?
Yes.
We aren't making a habit of it as of yet, but we did do a live stream a few days earlier. We had a great time.
Absolutely.
We raised some money, which I was really appreciative for, money to help with my pets' final expenses. But most importantly, Dave got super, super frustrated.
I wouldn't say super frustrated.
But okay, well then here's one you can't argue. Particularly inebriated.
Yes, I did get particularly inebriated.
I want to make a t-shirt that's a drawing of you with like a game controller.
Yeah.
And it just says super frustrated, generally inebriated.
I do like that.
That would actually be pretty dope. But it's just you like this, like with the tongue sticking out the side of your mouth because you're like really trying to.
But we do have to point out that I did beat Shaq Fu in like 25 minutes
on easy mode.
I think it was normal.
You're like, who's counting? Quiet, you. My publicist will be in touch.
But no, thank you to everybody who came and hung out with us. It was a lot of fun. We played a lot of different games and also talked about a lot of different things too.
That was the whole point. We played video games, which you choose the video game, but then we also played video games, talked about movies. Yeah. Answered questions about whatever may have come up, and we streamed for a full 12 hours. 12 hours and 20-some minutes.
Yep.
Which was all because of Dave's stubbornness.
And then we also wound down watching Terminator 2
in its entirety.
Yes.
So, which was a great choice. It was like 1:10 in the morning, and then it was like, all right, let's roll that beautiful beam footage. But so thank you guys so much. And anytime we have a live stream coming up, we will try to let you guys know ahead of time so you can check it out if you want to. It's usually going to be on a weekend. And with all of that said, Dave,
let's get into it.
You want to give the deets on Frankenstein Unbound, which I feel like we should have like a thing. Like every time we say Frankenstein, it should be like, with Frankenstein.
I like that. It is fitting. There's not a lot of storms in that movie, though, now I think about it.
Just when it matters.
When it matters,
when you're bringing life to an abomination.
So Frankenstein Unbound from 1990, 1 hour and 25 minutes, rated R. Our director of the film is the late, great Roger Corman. He gets his start as a director and producer on most of these as well. In 1955 with Five Guns West, he goes and does The Beast with a Million Eyes.
Well, for the record, Five Guns West, I believe, was one he did as an associate because he was writer on it, which is how he got his foot in the door.
Yeah. Because The Beast of a Million Eyes, I think, is his full-on first director credit, or it's Apache Woman in 55 as well. At 55, he does, alone, 4 movies here? Yeah, so he does Five Guns West, Beast of a Million Eyes, Apache Woman, The Day the World Ended, Swamp Women, Then in 56, he does Gunslinger, The Oklahoma Woman, It Conquered the World, Naked Paradise, Attack of the Crab Monsters, 57, Not of This Earth, The Undead in 57, which they mentioned in this trailer.
Yeah, they mentioned that in the trailer, which I'm no hate on The Undead. That's a fun film, but I didn't think that was one people were clamoring to remember. But then again, this is 1990.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm also surprised Roger Corman's name carried so much in the 90s.
Weight, yeah.
But it must have, because you don't only have Roger Corman's Frankenstein Unbound.
Yeah.
But then 2, 3, 4 years later, you get Roger Corman Presents on Showtime, which was a long-running series, 2 years of big movies for Corman Studio.
Yeah.
So I guess he was a bit more of a name than we realize. I mean, of course, in 90, you didn't exist, and I barely existed.
Yes.
I was like 4 years old, so...
So Rock All Night in 57, Carnival Rock, Sorority Girl, Machine Gun Kelly, The Wasp Woman, Bucket of Blood in 59. Then he does The House of Usher, which is his first Poe film in 1960. Last One on Earth in 60 as well, Little Shop of Horrors, The Pit and the Pendulum, The Premature Burial, The Intruder, Tales of Terror in 62, Tower of London in 62, The Raven 63, The Terror, X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes in 63, Haunted Palace, The Mask of the Red Death, Tomb of Ligeia, The Wild Angels, St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 67.
Which I think is a really solid gangster
Fantastic
movie.
flick. The Trip in 67, Bloody Mama in 70, Von Richtenfen and Brown in 71.
Richtenfelden-Brown.
Richtenfelden-Brown?
It was Richtenfeld. What is it?
Richtenhofen, Von Richtenhofen and Brown.
Maybe I have it wrong.
Yeah. That's in 71. Then he's an uncredited director on Battle Beyond the Stars in 1980, but then Frankenstein Unbound is his last directorial in 1990.
Well, and he wasn't credited on Battle Beyond the Stars.
Yeah, it just says uncredited on IMDb.
Yeah, he probably went in and directed a few little things to finish it up.
He fixed
it was the most expensive movie he'd ever produced, so I'm sure he had to get his hands dirty.
Writers on the film, we have Brian Aldiss, who did the novel Frankenstein Unbound in his first credit on IMDb in 1990. Then he's credited with AI, Artificial Intelligence, the Steven Spielberg film in 2001.
Oh, wow.
And he also has credit on Brothers of the Head, a film from 2005 as well.
I've never heard of Brothers of the Head.
I have not either. Roger Corman has the screenplay credit in this, along with his buddy FX Feeney, who has Frankenstein Unbound in 1990, The Big Brass Ring in 99, and Dawnland, which is a short series in 2009 as well.
Okay, that's a interesting.
Feeney, his name's not all over the place when it comes to producing or writing credits, but he's featured his self a lot in a lot of behind the scenes with Corman.
He probably was a staffer or something for a while, because when you're a staffer at a production house, you don't always get credits.
Yeah. Our cinematographer is Armando Nannuzzi. He gets his start in 1956. He mainly does Italian features, from what I could tell from his resume. A lot of Italian features on there.
Well, the film was shot in Italy.
Yeah,
so
it was.
That makes sense.
So he does Lust of Dio in 56, The Doll That Took Up Town in 57. Careless in 62, The Visit 63, The Magnificent Cuckold in 64.
That's a title.
It is a title.
That is a title, kids.
Wake Up and Die 1966.
That's a title.
The Damned 69, Chino 73, My Name is Nobody 73, Jesus of Nazareth, the television series in 77, the miniseries.
Oh, okay.
So that was the first one I could see, like, American-wise. Then he did Tigers and Lipstick in 79, Pagalachi 82, Sahara, the Cannon film in 83. He shoots that.
All right.
Then he does Mussolini and I in 85, Silver Bullet in 85.
He shot Silver Bullet?
Maximum Overdrive 86.
I think I know why that happened.
Okay.
A certain Italian man produced those films.
Oh, that's correct. Yes, he did. Control in 87, I Love New York in 87, The Gold Rimmed Glasses in 87, then does Frankenstein Unbound in 1990, and then Night Train to Venice in 93 was one of his last features as a cinematographer.
Okay. I mean, that's a hell of a lot of resume.
Yeah, second cinematographer on this is Michael Scott. Now, he doesn't have a lot in regards to his cinematography credits, but for camera operator, starting back in 1972, he's a camera operator on Drag Racer, Streets of San Francisco in 77, The Manitou in 78.
Oh, I like
Dial M for Murder remake in 81.
Ah.
Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock in 84. Beer in 1985. Ruthless People in 86. Black Eagle in 88. Die Hard in 88. Flatliners in 1990. Thelma and Louise, Basic Instinct, Lethal Weapon 3, Speed, The Specialist, Species, Jade, Twister, The Cable Guy, Dante's Peak, Speed 2, U.S. Marshals, Lethal Weapon 4, Inspector Gadget, End of Days, Donnie Darko, Dr. Dolittle 2, Anger Management, Carnival, the series on Showtime, Southland Tales, Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning in 2006, Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny in 2006, Pineapple Express in 2008, and Fast and Furious in 2009 as well.
Wait, how many of those were those all DP, or were those camera
operator
operators?
and camera setup, from what I could tell.
Okay. Camera op is different from being a DP.
No, massively, yeah, because I think first assistant, second assistant was a lot of those titles that he fell on with those.
Well, sure, yeah, you're working in the camera department.
Yeah.
This is, when you work on a really big movie, the director of photography does not generally operate the camera while you're rolling film.
Yeah.
They don't have their hands on it then. That's for the camera operator to do. It's also famously how, what's his name? From Grindhouse, the other guy in Grindhouse.
Robert Rodriguez.
Robert Rodriguez, thank you. It's how Rodriguez handled when studios would flat out mandate he couldn't be the DP. He would be the camera op, so he still got that experience of putting his hands on the camera.
Yeah.
Because that was, how he was birthed into the business. Also, since you didn't say it, Dino De Laurentiis was the Italian I was referencing.
Guy, I thought of DEG, but I couldn't think of his actual name. Like, I just saw DEG, and then I couldn't think of Dino.
Dino De Laurentiis, one of Corman's greatest kind of competitors.
Yeah, competitor.
Who grew too fast and flamed out like the rest of them.
And so many great and bad movies under that title.
De Laurentiis made some fun stuff.
Yes, he did. So moving on to our IMDb synopsis, it says, the ultimate weapon, which was meant to be safe for humanity, produces global side effects, including time slides and disappearances. The scientists behind the project and his car are transported from the year 2031 to 1817 Switzerland, where he finds Dr. Frankenstein and his contemporaries.
Now, that is a mouthful of a synopsis, so I'm curious what yours will be like.
My synopsis, a scientist is sent back in time to 1817, where he meets Dr. Frankenstein and Mary Shelley during the beginning events of the famous literary work.
All right, I like that. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Moving down to our cast, we have John Hurt.
Hilarity ensues.
Hilarity ensues. Yes, my apologies. Moving down to our cast, we have John Hurt, who plays Buchanan in this, Dr. Buchanan. He gets his start in 1962. 215 credits, by the way, on his resume, which I wasn't surprised.
I believe that. I mean, he was a working British actor for a very long time, which is one of the funniest parts of the movie when he says, I'm American.
I'm American.
And that fucking thick accent. Although later he says he's more of a Nuevo American.
Yeah. So he gets a start in 72 with, or 62 with Z-Car's Probation Officer, This Is My Street, ITV Play of the Week, Before Winter Comes, 10 Rillington Place in 71, The Pied Piper 72, The Ghoul, I, Claudius, Midnight Express in 78, Watership Down in 78, Lord of the Rings, the animated film in 78, Alien, of course, in 79. Then he goes on to do The Elephant Man in 1980, Heaven's Gate, History of the World Part 1, where he plays Jesus.
Jesus. Ah, okay.
Night Crossing, The Plague Dogs, Osterman Weekend, Champions, 1984, The Black Cauldron, From the Hip, Spaceballs, Deadline, Scandal, Frankenstein Unbound in 1990. Follows that with King Ralph in 91.
Now we're talking about a feature film.
Thumbelina, Rob Roy, Dead Man, Wild Bill, Contact, The Tigger Movie, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, of course, where he played Ollivander, Dogville, Hellboy, Valiant, Skeleton Key, Hellboy 2, 44-Inch Chest, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, Merlin, Only Lovers Left Alive, Snowpiercer, Doctor Who, of course, V for Vendetta, Hercules, and the last thing that he was in that I can confirm is That Good Night in 2017. I think he left us, I think it was 2018, I want to say.
Oh, I'm sorry you didn't have time to do the research.
Shut up. 2017 is the year he left
2017? Jeez. Yeah, very recent.
Moving down to our list, Mr. Raul Julia, who plays Victor Frankenstein in this. He gets his start in 51 with Love of the Life, then goes on to do Panic in Needle Park in 71, The Organization in 71, Sesame Street, The Bob Newhart Show, Death Scream, The Gumball Rally, Eyes of Laura Mars in 78, Life of Sin in 79, One from the Heart in 81, The Escape Artist in 82, Tempest in 82, Kiss of the Spider-Woman in 85, Compromising Positions in 85, The Morning After, Tango Bar, Trading Hearts, Tequila Sunrise in 88, Mac the Knife in 89, Presumed Innocent in 1990, does Frankenstein Unbound in 1990, and then The Rookie in 90 as well, then The Addams Family in 91.
Which is when he started to become just an international superstar, was in 91, so right after Frankenstein Unbound.
And then The Plague in 92, Addams Family Values in 93, and then Street Fighter in 94, which was unfortunately his last film.
I mean, if you're going to end...
You're going to go out.
And unfortunately, it's really a tragedy. We lost Raul Julia right when he was getting started.
Yeah.
And it's one of those that I am one of the it's like almost on par with Brandon Lee.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
For like, God damn, you were just getting started. I mean, granted, Raul had a lot more time in.
Yeah.
But people were just realizing what he was capable of.
Yeah.
And he was kind of, a lot of people think that he was on the way to, after Street Fighter, being in that kind of big Hollywood star thing where he could do one for them, then a couple for himself, then one for them. So they thought he was heading straight into being in Oscar-worthy movies with like the occasional tentpole movie here and there. And yeah, just we lost him way too soon. I think it was heart disease.
Stomach cancer.
Stomach cancer. Okay. Thank you for
he was diagnosed with stomach cancer, and I want to say 91 or 92.
Man, that sucks.
So it was very quick,
well, and I love what he, just for a moment, I love what he brought to Gomez Addams.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because when you look at the original depiction of Gomez Addams as a person, with, what was his name?
John Astin.
John Astin. John Astin played him great.
Yeah.
But John Astin played him in the way John Astin is good at.
Yeah.
So he was very much like what's going on here, guys? A very like all-American dad. It worked great. I love the TV series. So then when they bring this movie, they were like, you know what? Raul's got this internationalness to him because he's from Puerto Rico, if I remember correctly. So they were like, let's let Gomez be more of this vaguely European force.
Yeah.
And I love that version of Gomez where he has that accent. You're like, where's that accent from? And if you really dig, they're like, well, they're Castilian. Are they? And that's a whole other conversation because Gomez is not a first name.
Yeah.
That was literally a American writer trying to give a Hispanic name to a character and not really understanding the Hispanic names. That's why he's Gomez Addams. Doesn't really make any sense. But my point is, so Raul Julia, I just feel like he created in 2 movies a Gomez as memorable as one that took 7-8 years on television
to make.
That speaks volumes to how good Raul Julia was.
His emotions as Gomez Addams. I mean, in the scenes when he's calling into Sally on the talk show and everything.
I can't even talk about the first Addams Family movie. When Gomez loses the will to live, as a kid I was just like, ha ha. Then I watch it as an adult, I'm like, oh man. I mean, he just...
Oh, your husband's a dreamer.
Yeah, he's a dreamer, a loaf, whatever, and she just goes, not anymore. And that's the other thing, and that she loves him for that insanity.
Yeah.
So anyway, but that all being said, I just want to say, losing Raul Julia was a tragedy for the entire film world.
No, it absolutely was. And wrapping us up is our monster, who is played by Nick Brimble. He gets his start in 1970 with a film called Menace, Lust for a Vampire in 71, Wessex Tales in 73, Z-Cars as well in 74, The Sweeney in 77, Yanks 79, SOS Titanic in 79, Silver Dream Racer 1980, Masada in 81, The Final Option in 82, Sheena 84, Behind Enemy Lines in 85, so there's another movie with that title. That we need to show Jeff, probably.
Yeah. Well, Behind Enemy Lines, I mean, whoever heard a phrase like that?
Diamonds in 89, Frankenstein Unbound in 1990, then does the BBC House of Cards in 1990. Then, I completely forgot about this, plays Little John in Robin Hood Prince of Thieves in 1991.
Oh, he was the guy who played Little John. Well, now I can place him immediately.
Yeah. The Detectives in 94, Chef 94, Loch Ness 96, Ivanhoe, Gone Fishing, Wycliffe, Fortress 2, Re-Entry, Lockstock. There's a Lockstock and Two Smoking Barrels TV series. In 2001.
Must have been British.
Yeah. A Knight's Tale in 01, State of Play 03, Out of Reach, Doc Martens, Submerged, New Tricks, The Bill, Doctor Who in 2009, Midsummer Murders in 2011, War and Peace in 2016, Watership Down, the Netflix one in 2018, and was most recently in Grantchester in 2023.
Okay, so he's still kicking, or at least
still going,
has been.
And while that is our main cast, I would like to also mention the film does include the likes of Jason Patrick, who plays Lord Byron. We also have Bridget Fonda, who plays Mary, as in Mary Shelley. There's some pretty fun people in this one, not just those three.
A lot of people who are on their way.
Yeah.
I mean, Bridget Fonda was a name, but she would become huge in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly.
And right now, it was pre-90s. The movie came out in 90. It was probably shot in 89.
Yep. So Frankenstein Unbound, as of this point, this is one of those movies that has never made it off DVD, and unfortunately the DVD is a bit out of print now, but there may or may not be a way for you to see this film.
I saw it $76 was the last price I saw on Amazon.
Yeah, there may or may not be a way for you to find this on another website that we go by the name of YT for the initials. So if you want to look for it elsewhere.
So check Whitey.
Yeah, Whitey. Check out Whitey.
No, but no, unfortunately, this movie's been relatively out of print for quite a while.
Yeah.
We've tried pontificating about why. It might have something to do with the 20th Century Fox ownership, or that may no longer be the case. It's hard to know.
Yeah, because Anchor Bay did release it a while back, but that is also out of print now. So there's only 2 known DVDs that ever came out of this.
Well, and I feel like if it were possible to get the rights, Shout would have, because Shout bought Corman's entire catalog.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they want to release his last film as a director?
So what was your first time like seeing this?
So the first time that I recall seeing this, because there's a chance that it was on cable or something and I'm not remembering. So I'll really lean into, I remember watching it when I was probably 22 or 23. I could not find a copy. I had to do, what evil people do on the internet to watch it. I do think that you get into a moral gray area when you can't buy it. I where it's like not so bad. And when I was younger, I didn't mind as much.
Yeah.
So that's where I found it. I downloaded it and I watched it, and I was very taken aback by the science fiction beginning.
Yeah.
I completely was not ready for that.
Yeah.
And then I was somewhat expectedly taken aback by Raul Julia as Frankenstein, which is like the marketing. Well, I mean, the marketing now for that movie should just be, hey, fuckers, Raul Julia plays Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, wait, Gomez Adams? Like, yeah, bitch, watch it. Like, that would be the marketing.
That'd be the way to do it.
That would get people to watch that film because he's brilliant as Dr. Frankenstein.
Yeah.
He plays him with this incredible blanket of stoicism wrapped around him, which you would expect of a man of science in the 1800s. I think that's 1814 is when it takes place.
Yeah, 1817.
1817. I was surprisingly close.
Yeah.
And he plays this man of science with this very what I would call a gentle atheism, which was very common back then.
Yeah.
More so what you might have called deism. Are you familiar with the difference between deism and atheism?
I am not.
Well, cool. No,
Thanks.
No, deism was kind of the atheism pre-evolutionary biology.
Okay.
So deism was the belief that there was some kind of a higher power that put everything in motion.
Yeah.
But then that higher power stepped away. So the idea was like, well, yeah, something designed everything, but a good way to put it is, but there's no personal God.
Yeah.
So like you can't pray to it. It's just some kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And deism was very popular in America. Most of the founding fathers were deists, or at least somewhat deists. Mm-hmm. But then after evolutionary biology was born, after they discovered evolution, a lot of people became atheists because then they started going, well, we don't really need the idea of a creator from the beginning so much. And there are still some deists out there and stuff. But so to me, that was what he came across as, was like a very basic stoic 1800s deist scientist. He's not quite ready to curse God, but he's not far away from it
he's
either.
Not far from it, no.
Which is the way Dr. Frankenstein was always written anyway.
Yeah.
So I will gush the entire podcast about Raul Julia if I'm not careful. Also shout out for him popularizing the name Raul in America. Before that, I would hear people say Raul. Because it is Paul with an R.
Yeah.
Of course, Paul is how you would say it in Spanish. But also, even I cannot get myself to say Raul Julia because I grew up saying Raul Julia.
Yeah.
So I gotta leave
it there.
But anyway, I think that was what really took me aback. And I remember rewatching it just about three years ago. And again, being like, oh my God, there were moments, especially it's the third act where Frankenstein becomes the monster himself.
Yeah.
If I do say so. But he does, he becomes kind of insane. There's a great moment right at the end where he says, you're mad. And he just looks at him, his eyes just widen. And he's like, how am I mad? And you're like, you are,
you're mad, homie.
Yeah, it's so good. So I remember really loving that. I will admit, the first time I watched it, I thought the ending was kind of
Yeah.
And the last time I watched it before today, I also did not love the ending.
Yeah.
But this go around, it clicked with me pretty strongly.
Okay.
Maybe it's because of carrying Siri around in my pocket everywhere.
I mean, that could be. That could be.
Whoa. Because now it's like all of a sudden it's like, yeah, that computer you talk to might be the end of the world. I'm like, hey, a little personal there, pal. All right, I just needed to reorder cat litter.
Yeah, exactly.
Or something. I don't have a cat. I don't know why I said that. But what about you, Davey?
So I was made aware of this film by, I mentioned him on the show before, my buddy Mike, who works at one of the bookstores here in back in my town, Troy. He and I started bonding early on, like in my teens, with movies especially. Like he would show me stuff. And Frankenstein Unbound was one that I was looking through his program one day because he had the collector's program that I have where you can catalog them. And I saw John Hurt because there's that shot of John Hurt holding the axe as he takes the gallows. And I was just like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, it looks wacky.
Yeah, and I was like, and he's like, never seen Frankenstein Unbound? And so I started reading about it, and we unfortunately didn't get to watch it together, but I remember I found one at like a half-price book sometime later, and
I remembered what made me read it, or watch it, by the way.
What's that?
I read Corman's first book, How I Made 100 Movies in Hollywood Without Wasting a Dime, or Losing a Dime. And then I read another book which was called like Crab Monsters, Bikers, and something, and it was like a pictorial history of Corman. That book is insanely out of print now, by the way.
I bet.
But that was the book that made me want to read it, because that's the book that laid out, like, they offered him $1 million and he went and did whatever. In fact, in Wikipedia, everything that they seem to know about that movie is from that book.
That makes sense.
So but sorry, it just popped in my head. I was like, that was what made me go, no, I got to watch it right now.
But no, so I got that DVD, popped it in that night, and immediately too, I was kind of taken aback by the whole sci-fi element, and I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And then when he gets into 1817, it's just like, okay, this is just a straight up retelling of Frankenstein, but with a lot more things added into it now.
Well, and earlier, because Frankenstein is set. I don't think it's set that far back.
Yeah. But no, I was blown away by Hurt's performance. I was blown away by Raul Julia, and overall, I really like the way that the monster is displayed in this film, because it's like it's really not about him as much.
It's never been about the monster.
It's never been about the monster, but I mean, the monster has what, maybe 10 minutes of screen time?
Maybe a smidge more.
If
not
that.
Much. 15 would be tops.
But it's mainly just
tops.
those scenes between Hurt and Raul just in the room together with each other. Like that's the meat
it's
and
amazing
potatoes.
watching them circle each other.
Yes.
And I also want to give big shout outs to the design of the monster. The poster was always an eyeball with stitching. And they did that in the movie.
Yeah.
And it's unnerving, and I bet it hurt to put those contacts in.
I guarantee it did.
But his eyeballs are, when you get close-up shots of him, even on the DVD where you're not getting all of the detail in the world, you can see stitching. His eyes are pieces of other eyes.
Yeah.
Which, to be honest, why? But also, it was so cool.
It's cool.
No, it's totally cool. And like, but that's the kind of thing you would expect to be only on the poster.
Yeah.
You know, you would expect like, well, yeah, it's a visual representation of what it is to be Frankenstein. And then you see Frankenstein's monster, you're like, no, he's got stitches in his eyeballs.
Well, and I think honestly too, it goes back to the thing that like, there's so many versions of Frankenstein. I mean, I showed you that trailer for that 1994
There are
TNT
at least
one.
6.
At least 6, yes.
Might be 7.
But like we watched Fesden's Depraved, some years ago.
Yeah, which is a fun.
That was a fun
newer
one.
version, modern telling.
Of course, Lisa Frankenstein just came out recently, which is, I mean, loosely, but yes.
I was about to say my favorite Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Recent one, but I just remembered that if I say that, it ruins the whole film.
Okay, well, we'll save it to the end.
Oh man, no, not this film. I mean, it ruins the film I'm mentioning.
Oh, okay.
There's a movie, I don't want to name it.
Yeah.
If you've seen it, you'll know it immediately. But it seems like it's a movie about a woman being chased by a stranger, and then by the end of the movie, you realize he's literally Dr. Frankenstein, and he made the woman.
Yeah.
But I don't want to, because that was like the greatest reveal ever, and such a cool. I found that movie like randomly on like Showtime like recently.
Yeah.
So but I don't want to say the name because it ruins it. But it's a great film.
Yeah. So speaking of great film, you ready to get into Frankenstein Unbound?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So we open with a shot of a man wandering a snowy tundra as we hear John Hurt as Dr. Buchanan start a narration talking about how he's been searching for this time, and that they are dealing with the situation of, what is man-made, what's made by God. Then we cut to 2031, New Los Angeles, as we hear about the beginning of time slips, as they are showing us the Safe World, Project Safe World, which is a laser beam, a particle beam that's the most, advanced weapon that they're trying to create, but supposed to be safe for all of humanity.
I would hope it was the most advanced weapon known to man, because it's capable of maybe destroying I was going to say the world, but that's really underselling it.
I love that they start with a statue, the Statue of Liberty, and that's what they shock.
That's pretty solid symbolism.
Yeah,
you're destroying America. You're destroying freedom. You're destroying all of those concepts. It's like a laser gun, but the lasers are constantly moving. It's this really weird animation, not animation, but they are animated.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a laser light show.
Yeah,
yeah.
And as the lasers get more and more intense, something just disappears.
Disintegrates it, yeah.
But it doesn't disintegrate.
No.
It goes somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing he mentions. He's like, in the blink of an eye, all of your enemies are gone.
Yeah.
Because they are literally somewhere else. And that's, that's a pretty great telling. And if you think about the concept behind this film, think about the idea of it's a weapon. a perfect weapon, an amazing weapon. And well, what happens to the bad guys? They go somewhere.
They go somewhere. We don't know.
It's not our problem.
Yeah.
That's very telling of like the idea of like nuclear radiation and stuff like it's like, we don't exactly know, but like it's probably somebody else's problem.
Yeah.
I think that their thought, although they don't say it out loud, I don't remember them saying directly, is that the thought is like, well, they're probably being sent to like before Earth even existed, or like the middle of the galaxy where they're just going to die.
Someplace that's going to put them to death pretty quickly.
Yeah. And they're not thinking like, oh, it's just going to make everybody pile up, at the Empire State Building in 1953.
No.
That's not what they're thinking.
It's not going to happen.
But I love that idea that it's like, well, we don't exactly know where it goes, but it's fine. And then somebody says like, and then Dr. Buchanan even says like, and it's perfectly safe, allowing you to have all the powers of your own black hole. And I'm like, that sounds so safe.
So safe.
That's the safest thing I've ever heard. That sounds safer than eating chips and dip.
Well, then of course we have the people that are there that are paying for his research, and they're looking over the demonstration he's given, and right as they're finishing up the demonstration, this giant cloud appears in the sky that is black and like opening up what looks like a void, and he's like, oh, it's barely registering. It's nothing to worry about.
One of the scientists, like, is that a problem? He's like, oh, it's barely registering. And because remember, even when we were watching, I was like, well, we can see it.
Yeah.
So that seems worrisome. Yeah, and it's because what was this, 2030 something?
2031, New Los Angeles. They've had freak weather incidents and other predictable side effects from using this laser and testing it.
Yeah, which should be worrisome.
Worrisome in the fact that he gets into his car, his supercar, and he watches the news as they're talking about the freak weather incidents and everything that's occurring.
Yeah, you might have. Well, and this is an important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah.
This is, to me, referencing the first atomic bomb test, because I don't know if you recall this, but there was a legitimate fear that there was a possibility that when you split that first atom of uranium or plutonium, that it would cause a chain reaction that would just blow up the entire world.
Yeah, it would stop, because that was the whole thing that the scene in Oppenheimer where they talked to Einstein at the end.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out like, will it just keep going?
Yeah.
So now we're kind of in a world where it's like, actually, it just keeps going. You can't unring this bell.
Yeah, you can't put the genie back in the bottle on this one. So he tells his team that he wants to work with the laser prototype for tonight before he leaves the lab. And on his drive home, he sees the news report talking about the weapons testing and its side effects. And then he arrives home, but his car alerts him to the fact, because his car talks to him. And his car alerts him to the fact that there are intruders in his yard. And they're like, do you want me to alert the police? And he's like, no, it's probably children. So he pulls up to his home to find a group of like 4 kids, and they're burying an old bicycle.
Yeah, they're burying like a Schwinn, like a bike you would recognize from our time frame and stuff. Yeah.
And I love it because he's like, oh, did the old one die? And the kid's like, oh yeah, she got a new one. And they show this futuristic bike.
He's like, it died this morning.
Yeah.
And he's like, how do you know it's dead? And he goes, she got a new one.
Yeah.
And he's like, progress.
Progress,
yep. What a symbol. They're burying a bicycle for a new fancy bicycle.
So they're having a funeral for the bike. Suddenly another storm appears, and this one descends upon them and brings a like Hungarian warrior with them that's on horseback.
I don't think it was a Hungarian.
Not Hungarian, but I said Hun.
A literal Hun.
Yes.
No, but like literally it looks like somebody from Attila the Hun.
Yeah.
Or maybe even Genghis Khan
era,
some era like way back
on horseback,
Bronze Age,
riding out of the clouds, throws a spear at Buchanan, but the spear suddenly gets sucked back into the cloud with the warrior, and then also Buchanan gets sucked in with it, and he comes to on a nice grassy hillside.
And luckily for us, we only have to worry about the cloud losing our photos.
That's true, not just us.
It goes up to the cloud.
So he is found to be on the hills of Switzerland, which he doesn't know yet, but he's with his car, and his car informs him that they do not have any connections to satellites, TV, or even radio, so he's not getting anything. And he's like, where are we? So then he wanders into a nearby town, and he finds a local inn, and everybody's dressed in, I guess you could call it period-type clothing.
Like almost like it's the 1800s.
Yeah, like the 1800s. And he's like, the innkeeper's like, can I help you? And he's like, well, I'd like to get some food. And he opens up his wallet, and he's like, well, shit, I only have credit cards. So he takes off his
it's
ring.
Going to be 2 francs.
Yeah, 2 francs. So
2 Swiss francs.
Takes off his ring, and he's like, how much will this get me? And he's like, 50 francs. And I think he says...
Well, then he says, throw in the trout dinner, and you have
trout
a deal.
And the francs. And he's like, yeah, no problem at all. So then he sits down with the man, and he's like, do you mind if I sit here? And the man goes, well, I can't stop you. And he sees the date on the newspaper that the man is reading is 1817. And then the man puts down the paper, and we see see Mr. Raul Julia as Victor Frankenstein.
In all his glory, sitting there, reading his paper, eating his meal, stoic as fuck.
And he does not know he's Frankenstein yet, so he talks to him, and he's like, who are you? Like, why are you wearing that kind of attire? And John Hurt's character explains to him that he's a doctor and that he's come back here, but he doesn't say that he's from the future. And he's like, oh, you're a doctor. Well, I'm a doctor too.
Yes.
Taking notice of his watch because his watch starts going off, and he's like, how do you keep time? And he's like, can I look at that? And he looks at his watch and he's like, well, there's like digital numbers, like, there's no face, no hands, like, how do you read that? Like, how does it keep? And he's like, oh, it's electricity. He's like, but it's so small.
Yeah, you just can't believe that something so small could have electricity in it.
So the innkeeper comes over commenting on the recent passing of the man's brother, and he says, that they hope they get justice for the witch that killed him, and that's when we find out that it is Victor Frankenstein, and his little brother William has recently been killed, but they don't know who did it, but they suspect Justine the nanny is the one who did it.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Because she was found with his locket, but we'll get there.
Tiny woman definitely killed that grown man.
So the man excuses himself, but not before he states that his name is Dr. Frankenstein, and Buchanan, intrigued, follows Dr. Frankenstein to this section of the woods with his carriage, and he finds him speaking to some kind of creature, and the creature is begging him for what he asked him for. He wants what he wants, and then he will go and leave him alone. Suddenly, some falling rocks knock Dr. Buchanan out, and he goes into this really weird nightmare where he's just surrounded by a street filled with corpses.
The nightmares are an interesting touch.
Yeah.
I don't think they entirely hit their mark the way that I think they were trying to.
Yeah.
Honestly, you mentioned Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
It kind of felt like that was kind of what Oppenheimer did with the whole, like, he has the nightmares about the reality of his creation. And that's kind of what Dr. Buchanan is having, he's having these images of, like, basically the decimation of humankind that he maybe caused.
But it's all in relation to the Frankenstein lore for the most part, because it's all taking place back in the 1870s.
Wait. Are you trying to say Frankenstein is about something other than making a monster dude?
It could be. So he treks back to his location after he wakes up on the hillside. These dogs are like coming at him, but he gets them off him, and then goes back to the location of his car, which is hidden at this little cottage in the hills. And he questions to his car the probability of reversing the time slip using the laser prototype cannon on his car.
Yeah, because his car has got one of those. And one of my favorite things in this movie is one of the cheesiest things in this movie.
Yeah.
I cannot get enough of him driving that car.
Yeah.
This futuristic, goofy
his own
car.
kit.
Yeah. Driving it through the countride of 1800s
causing
Switzerland.
panic.
Well, eventually he just drives it through the town. He's like, fuck it. I mean, he has the calm care of affecting the timeline of a Captain Kirk.
Yeah, basically.
The only thing he didn't do was seduce a green woman.
That is true, but we never got Frankenstein Unbound 2, so we never knew what could have happened.
Or the director's cut.
Oh, I'm sure there is one probably.
Maybe. Or Corman was probably like, once the $1 million check cash, he's probably like, oh, what you do is fine.
So he asks his car, and his car says that it's going to take 96 hours for it to get an answer if he can actually reverse the time slip. So he parks the car, hiding it again, and ventures back into town. He dons the proper attire this time, and he begins to follow Dr. Frankenstein and his wife to where he finds the trial of Justine the nanny, who is accused of murdering. But it's not the only thing being talked about, because there are witnesses to some kind of monster in the town, one of which is a farmer who claims to have a footprint of the creature that killed all his sheep. And they laugh at him because when he picks up the barrel or the thing that has the dirt in it, all the dirt has run over, so there's no longer a footprint there.
Yeah, it was like an etch-a-sketch.
Yeah. So then they bring Justine out, but as they do this, Dr. Buchanan notices a young woman in the court taking notes, and so he sits with her and finds out that it's actually Mary Shelley.
Well, her name's Mary something else. But she will become Mary Shelley.
Mary Shelley, yes.
Yeah.
And that's when they go back into the court case that the young nanny who was found with William Frankenstein's locket is being accused of the murder and also, of course, being charged with witchcraft, because why not?
Well, because fuck it. Let's go.
So Justine is unfortunately found guilty of William's murder, and she is going to be sentenced to hang until dead in the morning. So Buchanan follows Victor out into the woods as he calls out for the monster. He's like, hey, I know you're out here. Reveal yourself. I know you're back. And the monster suddenly grabs Buchanan, and he threatens to kill Buchanan if Victor does not deliver what he asked for.
Well, but how he threatens.
Yeah.
He's holding him by the head.
Yeah.
Like by the jaw face area with one hand. And when he tells him, like, I'll kill him, he just lifts him up.
Yeah.
So the creature's probably about 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
Give or take. And so he just holds the guy up about a good foot above his own head.
Yeah.
With no effort at all while talking to Dr. Frankenstein. And that is one of the best show don't tells to reveal just how dangerous Frankenstein's monster is. And then, of course, when he tells him, you murdered my brother, Frankenstein, the monster literally goes, what is murder?
Yeah, what is murder? You should have made him stronger. You should have made him stronger like me.
He says, what is murder? He doesn't even know. And he says, you made his life stop. And then he goes, well, then he says the whole thing about, well, he was easy to crush.
He was weak.
Why didn't you make him stronger? He's like, I did not make him. He's like, well,
he came from woman.
Yeah, he came from one.
Well, how was I made? And he says, I made you. And he's like, what about your brother? And that's a whole thing that goes throughout the rest of the movie is him questioning the existence of God.
Yeah, he wants to understand if he has a creator.
Yeah.
Then and it's Dr. Frankenstein. Then doesn't everyone have a creator?
Yeah.
And it's funny because you ask that question and you get a different answer nearly anywhere you go.
Yeah, you do.
I love later on when he says who created you. He's like, I don't know. Maybe God.
Yeah,
or God maybe. It's a
Who
great
is this
line.
God maybe?
We'll get to it later.
So the monster threatens to crush everyone around Victor, if he does not give him what he wants, which is a mate. He does not want to be alone. He wants to have a mate. And Victor refuses. He says he will not create again. And the monster's like, okay, well, then I'll kill everyone you know. So then Victor fires a shot from his gun at him, and the monster scurries off. The creature then questions, or then Buchanan questions, what is he like? What did you do? And Victor refuses. And the monster tells him that he's going to murder Elizabeth then if he does not deliver. And then he runs off.
Yeah. And it's so it's not great news.
Victor, Dr. Frankenstein questions why Buchanan is following him before confessing that he knows everything. Like, he knows who he is, he knows what he's doing, and he questions why Justine must die for his sins. And of course, this is where we start to get a little bit of crazy Raul Julia, because he's like, I'm a scientist, I don't have sins.
Yeah, I'm a scientist, I do not sin.
Yeah. So Buchanan begs him to help Justine. So we cut to the hideout, the little cottage in the hills, and Victor is writing a letter. Of course, he's amazed by this pen. He's like, endless flow of ink.
It's just a ballpoint pen. No, but I love that. Because really, anything you hand him, he's going to be like, how?
Yeah. So Justine's innocence, and he says, he's asking where Buchanan came from, and Victor states that they are brothers of science, because Buchanan states, well, I'm a doctor, he doesn't state yet that he's from the future. He just says that he's also a guy that studies and a brother of science.
The most he gives is I'm from America.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, I saw a meme this morning that I just remember, started thinking about because of the movie. It was literally just this drawing of a guy who's it was time traveling. He was like, man, I can't wait to go back in time with all of my advanced knowledge. And then he's just standing with a group of clergy and doctors and stuff. They're like, so how does this cell phone work? And he's like, I don't know. And that's the whole meme. I don't know.
So later that night, the monster wanders into the woods, and we start to see fireworks going off above his head. There's something being celebrated in town. They begin to echo. So he wanders into town trying to find them, and he comes across these two kids that are just absolutely scared of him when they come across him.
Why? Why,
Weird, huh? So then he questions who made them, and the boys are just screaming, so they draw the attention of a cop who comes over, and he's blowing his whistle trying to get the attention to somebody helping with the monster, and the monster's like, stop that, putting his hands over his ears because the whistle's hurting his ears. The guy just keeps blowing the whistle, so then he picks him up. The guy stops, and he goes, I told you to stop that. Then just takes his hand and chucks it right into his ribcage, ripping out the heart.
And it's a great sequence because the fireworks are going off in the sky and everything. And there's a constant reference to this being post-Napoleon Switzerland.
That's a joke he actually makes when he sits down, Yeah,
that's a very common thing people are talking about. Also worth mentioning that his ears hurting is because Dr. Frankenstein made him the best, gave him the best eyesight, the best hearing, the best strength. He references multiple times, I improved bone and muscle so that they could work better together and stuff like that. So that would be a negative. He couldn't handle a whistle, so, you got to rip his heart out.
Got to rip his heart out. So the next morning, Dr. Buchanan goes to take the letter to Elizabeth that Victor said that he confessed everything to, so she welcomes him in, gives him the letter, and Buchanan tries to convince her that they have to take the letter to a judge. She's like, well, why? There's nothing condemning in here. I can't go against Victor. Women.
He just... Buchanan really doesn't want that girl to hang, as is proven by the most batshit moment of this movie, aside from the third act.
Yeah,
when he goes to see the hanging.
So he tries to convince her, but she will not go against her own husband. So Buchanan now has his car print a copy of Mary Shelley's
husband to be.
Yes, my apologies. Has his car print a copy of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So he actually prints Frankenstein unbound because it's not bound.
It is not bound.
Yes,
you could leave. Please leave this place.
So he prints a copy of the book trying to find out some more stuff, and that's when he actually goes to meet Lord Byron and Percy Shelley and Mary on their property. And he wins Byron over because Byron's who's played by Jason Patrick, just walking around the water with a pistol, firing shots off.
Well, he's an example of being a literal aristocrat.
Yeah.
He's bored.
Yeah.
He just wants interesting things. So he gives him one toy, his magnifying glasses.
Yeah, his binocular glasses.
Yeah, they're like binoculars and glasses.
Yeah.
He gives those to him, and he's immediately so amused by them that he's very helpful.
Yeah, he's like, hey, join us for breakfast. Like, come meet everybody. So he gives them these glasses, and he sees Mary. He goes to spy on Mary and Percy and sees that Mary is riding in the boat. So that's when he invites them to join them for breakfast. So Percy Shelley as well is there, and Mary comes in greeting Buchanan because they've already met at the court trial. So she already knows him. And he asked her, if she could help him in regards of getting Justine's innocence found. And she's like, well, I just don't have the time right now. So then Buchanan decides to run and stop the hanging himself.
With just an axe.
So he is running towards town. He gets to the gallows, grabs an axe, runs up on the stage, and they don't have her in the noose yet. And he's like, this woman goes free. Well, he doesn't realize he's standing on the trapdoor, so he just falls through the trapdoor. The mob rushes him. They start carrying him off. Then they just hang Justine like it's nothing.
Well, no, it's not like it's nothing. They all cheer.
Yeah. Right in front of him.
Hey, they didn't have, thank God it's Friday television.
There we go.
All right, this is the best they had.
So then, to add insult to injury, they just carry Buchanan over to a cliff and chuck him over the side into the water.
Which, that's one way to do it.
And then he has a nightmare that now he's on the operating table as Frankenstein is, with his limbs being lasered off and put together and whatnot. And is this when she calls him an abomination, or is that the next one?
I think that might have been that one.
I think that's that. Yeah, I think it is. So coming to in the water, Mary is with him, and she's questioning how he knows about her book, how he knows about her writings. She hasn't published anything yet. She just started writing, and he offers to show her rather than tell her. That's when he brings out his car. And he also shows her the manuscript for Frankenstein. They drive through the countryside, and they catch the attention of a few locals, like I said.
Well, it's
Devil!
It's not just a car. It's this ridiculous, futuristic-looking car, and they've never seen anything like that. So
everybody calls it a carriage because that's all they have to go off of.
Well, the car was originally called the horseless carriage, so it makes sense.
So Buchanan confesses to Mary that he's from the future. He shows her the book, and she questions, how does it end? How long will she live? She starts questioning all these things that he could answer, and he's like, do you really want me to answer that? Like, do you really want to know? And that's when she's like, you can stop the car. I'll get out. And that's when they go over to the side of the riverbank, and he points like at his monster, as he calls it, which is the cloud. And that's what he says, well, that's where he came from, is the void in the sky. And he compares himself to Frankenstein for creating a monster with his weapon.
And that's where the subtleties finally fade away.
Yeah, because then Mary states that he's not a man of religion, so his science must be his religion, but science also breeds madness for a man with no religion, which I do love that line.
That's a good line. No, it's a really good line.
So they kiss and embrace each other as Mary states, that Percy and Lord Byron, preach free love, but she practices it. So, John Hurt gets it on with Mary Shelley.
Yeah, he does. And first of all, if you're going to make a movie or write a book about going back in time, why wouldn't you also have your main guy just like
time travel sex?
Just sock it to Mary Shelley once.
Yeah, just once.
Just a one time.
So Elizabeth, back at her home, requests a carriage because she wants to go see Victor. Buchanan returns to his hut, and he finds Victor waiting for him. And Victor Frankenstein tells Buchanan that he's decided to make the monster a mate in hopes of saving Elizabeth. And in the woods, we see that Elizabeth is on her way, but now the monster is tailing her carriage. So he's following her as she's going to Victor. Victor begs for Buchanan's help with electricity because he says, he doesn't know how to harness it. He doesn't understand it, but you do.
So is tailing a carriage, is that a euphemism?
It might as well be, right?
Hey!
So Dr. Buchanan shows Victor Mary's novel as well, and Elizabeth's screams suddenly echo through the woods as we see the monster has caught up to her. He's climbed under her horses and stopped the horses now, too. So she falls off the carriage.
He literally puts his hands on the horses and stops them. Another example of this massive, unbelievable strength.
And, of course, that causes Elizabeth to fall to the ground. She questions what monster is he, as he states that Victor made him, and she says, well, Victor's my husband. He wouldn't want me to see any harm. And the monster goes, I know. And then just opens her ribcage up entirely.
Yeah, it just rips her open like a friggin' Reese's peanut butter cup.
Yeah, showing no emotion as he does it, of course. And then Victor arrives at the body.
He's a little happy about it.
Yeah, a little bit. Victor arrives, though, and shows no emotion.
Well, that's just his move.
So, finds her body and shows no emotion, and Buchanan is mistaken for Elizabeth's murder as this mob comes at them quickly, and then the monster shows up again and starts making mincemeat of those people as well.
Yeah, he has no problem just
rips off one guy's arm.
Yeah, just tearing people apart, literally.
So then the rest of them scatter because they're trying to hang Victor. The monster just dispatches them, so the rest of them scatter, and that's when the monster finds Buchanan, and he is told by Victor to be careful with him as they can help each other. And Buchanan has another nightmare now of him being Frankenstein. Okay, this is the one of him being Frankenstein.
Okay.
As Byron, Percy, and Mary are looking over him, and she calls him an abomination in the eyes of God.
I mean, when you're right, you're right.
So Buchanan comes to at a church that Victor is at, and the monster questions, is he alive? And he's like, yes, I am. And then the monster throws him outside as Victor is leaning against his car, reading his manual to the car as well.
Well, I mean, that's a good way to pass the time, right?
It is a good way to pass the time. And he realizes that this car has the electricity and the power that it possesses. Buchanan tells him that he'll get no help from him as the monster grabs him, choking him, and Victor goes, I could let him play with you all night if you want. You want to think about it and give me another answer again?
I mean, at least you get a choice, right?
So he asks him if he'll reconsider, and Buchanan gets word from the car that he has introduced a new composition into the world in time and space, and that has made the answer unbound. It has lessened his probability to reverse the time slip. So now he really doesn't have much of a choice on how to get home.
Yeah, and it's one of many creative uses of the phrase unbound, which makes sure that the movie makes sense. Unlike one of Dave's favorite movies, Burnt, where nothing gets burnt.
This is true. So the
in
monster,
a movie about cooking. Anyway,
the monster taking notice of the car questions, is it a man? How was it created? And he then requests the monster, can you take these cables up to the top of the tower and tie them off so we can have this experiment?
And they look like ropes, but they're actually electrical cables.
Yeah.
They're copper wiring. So the creature is literally carrying like 300 pounds of copper wire.
Yep.
That's braided like rope.
Yeah, just climbing a tower like it's nothing.
Yeah, he's the man for the job.
Yeah,
or the abomination for the job.
Yeah. So the monster and Buchanan ascend to the tower as the monster begins to connect the cables. The monster again questions, who made you? And Buchanan states, I don't know, God maybe. And the monster's like, well, who is this God maybe? And Buchanan tells him that he better ask Victor, and the monster's like, well, I intend to. So Buchanan goes down telling the car that he wants it to load a laser implosion program. So the monster and Victor have no idea about this.
Well, I think if they heard him say load a laser implosion, whatever, they'd be like, what?
Yeah. So before joining the monster back in the church, the monster is looking over his mate that turns out to be Elizabeth. So Victor is using Elizabeth's body to make the monster a mate.
Well, a major portion of her body. I mean, the parts.
There are parts abound in this, or unbound, I guess.
Thank you.
So, back in the church, they're looking over Elizabeth's body, and he states that no man can create a soul, and that's when Buchanan starts calling Victor out. He's like, you're mad, like, you're crazy, like, you cannot keep doing this.
And, of course, Victor's just like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Big eyes.
Victor laughs at him before instructing the monster to pull the first lever, and the car readies to implode, and we hear it's at 98%, approaching 99%. 2 more levers are pulled, and we see Elizabeth briefly start to move, and then her movement just fails again. So Victor's freaking out. He's like, what can you do, Buchanan? Like, we have to get this going. We can't stop it now. So Victor demands more power or she will die, but Buchanan states there's nothing he can do as Victor has the monster pull every remaining lever now in this, I guess you could call it makeshift laboratory.
Well, and it's important to keep in mind that the more electricity goes to the potential bride of Frankenstein, the more potential power goes to that, the more is going into the car to power it to send a laser beam out and sort of obliterate them.
Everything, yeah, in a sense, yeah.
in a way.
Remaining lever, he injects Elizabeth with more fluid to get her to go. The car begins, the laser implosion sequence as Elizabeth comes back to life right before our eyes, and Victor states she lives. The laser begins opening up a time void again as Buchanan tells Victor to meet his monster, and that's when suddenly Buchanan is back in his frozen area that the film started in. But he's not alone, as we see Victor coming out of one of the rooms with him.
Well, he's especially not alone.
Yeah.
As they took most of the building with them as well.
Which is now scattered a piece.
Yes. I mean, it's seen better days. But it brought it with him.
Yeah, so he's Victor coming with him and questioning what has he done, and he wants him, he's like, put it back, and he's like, I can't, I don't know how.
Yeah, there's no way for him to do that.
Yeah, so he's like, put it back or I'll kill you, drawing his pistol on him, but he stops as he finds out Elizabeth and the monster are with them as well, and Elizabeth now walking with the monster, she shows fear for the monster until he tells her to take her hand, and they're comparing their hands, and that's when Elizabeth recognizes Victor telling her to step away from the monster.
It's important to point out, Victor, I guess, improved her hands.
Yeah.
So she has an extra thumb on either side of her hand.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
And a bunch of other, just seeing her own hands, she's realized immediately
what she is.
And what he's done to her. What he's
done, yeah.
And that is an incredibly mortifying moment.
Yeah.
Really great
because the monster's happy to see her, but she
because he's been demanding a mate. He's even said, if you make me a mate, I will leave and you'll never see me again.
Yeah.
Because the monster's big thing is that he's alone.
He's alone, yeah.
He's completely alone.
Yeah.
Because he's very much taken after, for those who've never read, not that I'm some literary genius, but if you've only experienced Frankenstein from the lens of kind of the mainstream motion pictures, he doesn't speak in the movies, but in the book, he pontificates.
Yeah.
He asks questions about his existence and about man and about life and all this stuff. And that's definitely what they're kind of, it's hard to do it in a not cheesy way in a movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not going to say that they nail it in this one either. It is kind of silly how this like creature is like, but what is God?
Yeah.
You know, but you suspend your disbelief. You put it in a box, you torture it a little bit. And I do like this depiction of Frankenstein quite a bit. He also kind of looks like Victor Crowley.
A little bit.
Well, Victor Crowley kind of looks like him.
No, I would
be a better way to put it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But no, so I do appreciate that we got the thoughtful Frankenstein, because also the other point of why Frankenstein's monster talks in the book and wonders and everything is he's given a brain.
Yeah.
He's given a good brain, because everything that Victor does is to make the monster better than man.
Yeah, not an Abby normal one.
Not an Abby normal one. But there was still a roll in the hay earlier.
Yes, there was a roll in the hay.
That.
So she is just realizing what a monster she is, and Victor's like, come away from him, come to me. And so she goes towards Victor, but of course, Victor's still having his pistol out. She just falls right in front of it, grabs it, and makes him kill her by shooting right in the heart.
She jumps in front of it and grabs it. So as he's about to kill the monster so that he can have his monster bride, it's one of the like smoothest, like the motion is so sudden, you really feel like you couldn't have stopped it. Because he's like about to shoot, and she jumps in front and points the gun right at her own heart so that he just kills her right then and there.
Yeah. So now Victor has accidentally killed his bride. I mean, I guess it was his bride at one time.
A bride of sorts. Well, it's his bride as in he made it.
Yeah, I mean, there's that.
We made you.
So the monster grabs Victor, angry, and immediately puts him up in the air, breaking his back and then throwing him to the ground. So he's just a pile of bones at this point.
Well, hold on. I mean, he literally lifts him over his head.
Yeah.
And then instead of like what you would expect,
like
dropping him on his knee or breaking him in half, he gives him just a good twist.
Yeah.
And you hear all the snapping and cracking, and then he tosses him aside.
And more snaps.
And he's not dead yet.
No, he's not.
Because his last words, as the monster runs off and Buchanan goes to check on him, as blood is trickling from his mouth, and Raul Julia is so fucking good.
Yeah.
He looks at him with this like pleadingness in his eyes. He says, kill it. And then he dies. So good. I got goosebumps. That's such a great scene.
So then Buchanan, deciding to do it, he goes and grabs the pistol and a coat and begins to track the monster through the footprints in the snow. And he comes to a hatch midway, and he sees the hatch is open and it goes down into a bunker. So climbing down the ladder, Buchanan finds a fully functional lab with computers, lights, everything. And the lab even welcomes him and says, welcome, Dr. Buchanan.
Yeah, it knows him by name.
So that's when suddenly the monster breaks through a wall and informs him that this world has been made much better, more so than Victor ever could. And Buchanan questions how, and he says that he created this. This is your brain for the city across the way.
Well, and he says that the reason the world is better is it's a lonely world.
Yeah.
Like his world is lonely.
Yes.
It's a barren world, like he is barren, which is some good shit.
That's very good shit. Buchanan questions how he created this, and the monster informs him this is the brain of the great city, the last vestige of mankind. So Buchanan shoots the monster, dropping him to the ground, but the monster comes back angry and tries to kill him. There's a whole chase through the lab where he is getting these lasers ready also to fire on the monster.
Yeah, he's prepping a trap and also just attacking him with things. At one point, he stabs the monster with a pipe, and his blood starts pouring out of the pipe, and he just rips it out of himself. I mean, he shoots it in the head. And it becomes very clear that this creature's going to be really hard to kill.
Yeah, and the monster even questions what makes him want to kill him, and Buchanan comments that he's an abomination in the eyes of God, stating, what makes you better? And he goes, well, I'm a Frankenstein, which I get why he says that, but also I don't know if it's something I like from the film.
I like that.
You like that?
Because he's following in his creator's footsteps.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Okay.
Think about it. But no, really think about that for a second. He's following in his creator's footsteps.
Oh, shit.
His creator followed in his creator's footsteps and made a monster.
Yes. he's
so
destroying
it's
the
a
monster.
Cycle.
That's really okay. Now that's actually really cool.
Yeah, no, like that's a that's why we talk about movies, so we can find stuff we miss.
So he shoots him again as the monster angrily rips off his own arm, chasing him around the lab a little more, destroying many pieces of the lab because he's trying to get Buchanan as he can. Buchanan quickly realizes that he can control the lasers because, like you said, the brain is this lab, so anything that he does movement-wise and stuff triggers anything in this lab.
Yeah.
So he sets all these lasers to come in on the monster, and the monster just starts burning alive, and he says he doesn't understand that he can't kill him, and we watch the lasers quickly take down this monster before the lasers prompt a door open, allowing Buchanan to escape the lab.
And this is another part of like the headiness of the movie.
Yeah.
Because as he's walking out, he hears the monster's voice in his head, and he says, I'm unbound.
Yeah, you think you have killed me, but I am forever. I am unbound.
But what that means is, to me, is in two directions. Number one, the whole you can't put the genie back in the bottle, you can't unring the bell. That's part of it.
Yeah.
And then also the fact that the monster, Frankenstein's monster, is just a representation of what man will do. As long as there is a man to think, they will challenge the creation and they will challenge those things. Because, I mean, that's what Frankenstein's always been about.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's about the dangers of playing God, the dangers of doing things from a place of no morality.
Yeah.
So he really is like, he's like, you can't kill me because I'm an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an idea in your own fucking head. Because you made, because I love that moment when they see the rift and Frankenstein's like, what is that? And he goes, it's my monster. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. Anyway, I'm sorry.
So Buchanan then approaches the city, and that, my friends, is 1990s Roger Corman's Frankenstein Unbound.
Yeah. And I will say, if you're seeking this film out, and it is very hard to get a hold of, whether you're watching it on the internet somehow or you actually, manage to get a DVD, I think this film would do so well with a real high-end transfer.
Absolutely.
Because some of the sets and stuff don't look that good.
They don't.
Because it's also plain Jane. I would love to see this movie remastered. I would love to see them pop the colors and make the dark tones dark and eerie.
Yeah.
I pray. It's got to come someday.
It's got to come someday.
Because we're getting to a point now where we're getting special editions of movies where it's like, why are they even doing this? Yeah. So this has got to happen.
It's got to happen.
It's got to happen. It really, really does. But that all being said, Dave, where do you want to go from here?
So we've got some trivia. So the problem with a movie like this in regards to both its release and just general information out there is very slim. There's no bonus features on the disc I have. It's bare bones. There has never been another release with a commentary, anything, and trying to find anything behind the scenes on this is between Wikipedia and IMDb.
It's pretty sparse. It really is.
So budget was $11.5 million. Opens on November 2nd of 1990 and brings in $335,000.
I'm guessing that it was released in one city, probably Los Angeles or something like that, or maybe two cities.
Yeah.
It was not a theatrical film. I think it was always considered a home video. And
we couldn't even find a TV spot for the program.
Yeah. If there's no TV spots from a movie in 1990, it was not in major theaters.
Yeah. So filmed in Italy, parts of Milan and Bellagio, and shot in 7 weeks.
I mean, that sounds right.
Producer Tom Mount approached Corman with the idea to get him back directing after 2-decade absence. To find a script strong enough, he looked at known writers like Wes Craven and Floyd Mutrux to craft something, but ended up having FX Sweeney adapt Brian Aldson's novel, paid $1 million to direct it as well.
Yeah, I mean, that $1 million, that's hard. I obviously wouldn't turn it down, but I can see Corman being like, I can take a half a year away from my business. I'll just let Julie suffer through it.
Yeah. So the title is a reference to the full title of Mary Shelley's original novel of Frankenstein, The Modern Prometheus, which is shown in the film, of course, and Percy Bysshe Shelley's lyrical drama Prometheus Unbound. The futuristic car that Buchanan drives is an 88 Ital-designed Aztec concept car.
Okay, all right.
And Nick Brimble received an introducing credit despite having been in 8 theatrical movies, both UK and US productions, as well as many high-profile television dramas.
I did find it weird because when I saw that it said "and introducing," but then you read a huge list of I was kind of surprised by that.
So what are your final thoughts on Frankenstein Unbound?
I think that this is definitely a rent it.
Yes.
If you love Frankenstein, I want to read the book now.
Yes,
I'm actually going to get the Audible book when we're done recording.
Yeah.
I really want to read it.
Yeah.
Because it's so funny. It's really funny. You take the Frankenstein story from the 1800s.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, it still applies in many ways. Sure. But now you take a book from like the 1970s about artificial intelligence and weapon development and all this stuff, a post-nuclear Frankenstein.
Yeah.
That's, I think, a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It's post-nuclear Frankenstein. And then this movie's made in the 90s. So like everything is just like still not now.
Yeah.
But I think it really taps into a modern mindset in a way that I think is valuable.
Yeah.
And just now, like when we were talking about it, we found things we hadn't realized about the movie just talking about it for a little bit. I will forever be enraptured by the idea that you were like, I kind of hate that line. And I said like 3 things about it. And you were like, it's a great line.
Yeah.
Like that's the beauty of movies. That's why we sit here and talk about them.
Absolutely.
Is because you never know what you're going to miss. And I think that if you don't like horror movies, you would never want to watch this movie.
Yeah.
But if you like Frankenstein, especially if you read the first book,
yeah,
or if you've just seen most of the Frankenstein movies, this one is one that would totally be worth your rental. If I could see the movie in HD, if I could see a real transfer, I might have been confident enough to say buy it. But I haven't, so I don't know, because I hate this because it makes me sound snobby, but like, there have been so many movies that basically anything not Argento, that when I get a true beautiful HD or 4K of it, it elevates it.
Yeah.
Because you really get to see the detail and the quality of the work. And because it's insane, guys. Like, as a lifelong film lover who's made my living in the film business for a decade, which is insane to say. It's a decade as of the day we're recording this.
Yes, it is.
But as with all those qualifiers, I can, for under $2,000, have a projector and a surround sound system, not a full-blown Dolby blah, 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 but a projector and a sound system, and then put on Blu-rays, and it's as good as having a 35 millimeter screening room in your house was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, because I have this 120-inch screen. It's what we watch almost everything on.
Yep.
And I mean, half the time, if you get a movie you're excited to get on Blu-ray, you don't even bother watching it at home. You're just like, when are we going to put it on the big screen?
Yeah.
Because it's a different experience. It really feels like I have an old Hollywood screening room.
It absolutely does.
So I would love to get a chance to watch this film beyond home video. I would love to. I would love to see, whether it's by getting a Blu-ray or getting to see a screening of it. I'm sure there's got to be a print out there somewhere that somebody owns. Yeah. But anyway, those are my thoughts. What about you, Dave?
So it's a rent it for me as well. It just doesn't have enough strength as a buy it, because it's one of those films that it's the mixture of the sci-fi and the period piece is really, really cool. But I think that is for a special niche of people that are going to be into that.
Special needs.
Special niche, not need. But John Hurt and Raul Julia just going back and forth is a reason alone to watch. But even Jason Patrick for the little he's in it, and Bridget Fonda for the little she's in it, are still really, everybody is really good in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can tell that they put time into the performances.
And it goes places at the end that, like you said, like if it had been, when you have that Roger Corman notoriety with it, you expect that low budget feel to it. Even with the crazy ass science lab at the end and the reveal of all that, it doesn't take you out of the movie, because it's just like, wow, they actually really did think about this for even the building of the novel and whatnot. Like, that's why I'd be curious to see how much it relates back to it, because there's an hour and 20-minute video on YouTube comparing the two.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I want to watch that video.
Yeah. So, but no, I think Frankenstein Unbound, it has not been seen by so many eyes because of just its availability, but it is one that if you're a Raul Julia fan, if you're a John Hurt fan, if you're a Frankenstein fan, or even just want to watch something that you probably have never seen nor heard of from Corman, this is the one to go with.
I would agree with that. Absolutely, man.
No, I think it's a lot of fun. So that is Frankenstein Unbound. And as we always like to do, we like to wrap up with a couple of recommendations. I have two for this one. 1994, Kenneth Branagh's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the story of Frankenstein that they did in the 90s with, I think it's Kenneth Branagh, De Niro plays the monster, John Cleese is in it. I have not seen that movie in a while, and I'm due for a rewatch on that.
Me too, definitely.
And the second one is one that I discovered a couple years ago that I cannot get enough of. Time After Time from 1979. H.G. Wells pursues Jack the Ripper to the 20th century, where when the serial killer is using the future writer's time machine to escape time period. You have David Warner, who plays Jack the Ripper, Malcolm McDowell, who plays H.G. Wells, Mary Steenburgen, who plays the chick that he falls for. It's a lot of fun.
Well, and mine, because you take all the good ones.
Oh, my
you
apologies.
go first. Mine, I'm trying to make sure I get the title right because I've only seen it a few times, but I did really like it. It would probably be Larry Fessden's film.
Oh, Depraved.
Depraved. I kept thinking it was Depravity, which is not the right title. Depraved. I think while like very similar to this one, it has great concepts. It's flawed, but it's totally worth watching.
Absolutely is.
So Depraved would be my pick to double feature this bad boy with.
And if you all have any Frankenstein movies that you feel are underappreciated, let us know in the comments. Let us know via email, because Frankenstein movies are a lot of fun. They can be hit or miss, but they're still fun to enjoy for the most part.
I mean, at the very least, you can enjoy pieces of them.
Pieces, indeed. So you want to know what we're talking about next week?
Absolutely not.
So we are continuing, of course, Roger Corman Tribute Month and going back to his producing with 1982's The Slumber Party Massacre.
And that was my pick.
Yes, it was.
One of my all-time favorite films and one of my all-time favorite Roger Corman 80s productions. And there's so much to talk about on that one. Don't be surprised if that's a long episode for a short film, because I have watched every documentary. I'm going to rewatch some of them.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to sit down and talk about Slumber Party Massacre.
And if you can't wait for that, we do also have an episode that you and I appeared on with our buddy Mike the Birdman Dodd on This Week in Geek, where he did talk about Slumber Party Massacre 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, we did.
And the remake, requel, legacy sequel, whatever you want to call it.
Worth checking out on This Week in Geek.
Yes.
So if you guys want to email us, I just want to remind you can go to doyouevenmovie@gmail.com.
Yes,
Send
sir.
us an email. We love getting emails from you guys. I don't believe we have any new ones unless we got one while I was prepping. Nope. But we love to hear from you guys. We love to hear movie suggestions. We take them very seriously. We did Urban Legend because someone requested it for their birthday.
Yep.
So we love to hear from you guys. You can also go to doyouevenmovie.com. Find all the information about the show. Also, if you're listening on podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting app, especially Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Yes.
If you're watching us on YouTube, hi. And thank you for joining us. Please leave a like. Maybe tell a movie-loving friend if you think they wouldn't be that annoyed by the way I look. And subscribe, hang out, leave a comment. It really helps. And we always are here to answer the comments, or at least I am.
Yeah.
Dave doesn't really love you. He's
sometimes.
a weekend host.
I mean,
He's
I
like a
have
weekend
to.
dad.
I have to go defend ourselves when we put up a clip talking about Love Roller Coaster, but that's about the.
Oh man,
extent
you're
right
never
now.
gonna let that go.
I'm not. I just people.
Well, on that note, everybody, unless you got anything else, Double D.
I mean, of course, you can find us on Instagram at Do You Even Movie Pod, and we are also available on Facebook as well. Like I said, just comment, message us, let us know if you have any movies you want us to look at, suggest for the show. We just love hearing from the people who enjoy listening to us babble about this stuff.
Yep, and babble we do. So now we're going to get out of here, but we will see you next Tuesday. Adios. I gave him life.